This is the Anbernic RG350. It is a retro handheld that runs Linux and actually is very powerful for its price point. I've managed to get it emulating everything up to PS1. But how does it actually hold up against its competitors, particularly at this price point? Well, stick around as we do a full review and a deep dive of the Anbernic RG350. Let's go. Let's quickly talk packaging here. I wasn't particularly impressed by the packaging and what you get in the box. You really do just get the console itself, a USB-C cable, and the instruction manual. That's it. You don't get a ton of accessories or added little bits. I'd have liked to have seen a little bit more attention to detail when it came to the packaging, but for sub £100 I will let it slide. My version that I bought from Amazon did come with a micro SD card. A lot of them do, some of them don't, and mine had a load of ROMs already installed on it. I'm not going to go into the legality of this now. It probably isn't legal for them to do this. Well, it certainly isn't legal to do this, but if you manage to get one with some ROMs, great, but I would suggest supplying your own ROMs just for legal reasons. Let's do a really quick tour of the device. I've got the black and orange version here. They do it in a couple of different colorways, but this one was the one that I liked the most, purely because it was somehow understated yet still striking in its color scheme. Genuinely, this thing will turn heads and I think it just looks really nice, especially for the price. Up front, we have a 3.5-inch IPS display with a resolution of 320 by 240. The slightly garish Anbernic logo on the front is not really to my taste. I wouldn't have liked to see this kind of branding on the front of the device. I'm okay with it on the back where I'm not going to see it, but hey, each to their own. It's definitely not a deal breaker. We also have all those controls along the front too, and you can tell that the build quality is something that Anbernic really did focus on here. It really is pretty good. All of the buttons, including the D-pad, feel clicky. The best way I could describe that D-pad is a little bit like the one on the Nintendo 3DS. You've got quite a nice amount of travel without it feeling too mushy. Same with the sticks, they have a really nice grip to them. And actually, they feel pretty nice. They also have L3 and R3 capabilities, and that will come in handy when it comes to emulating some of the later devices. Alongside the top, you do have two USB-C ports. One of those is simply for charging, while the other one is for accessories like game controllers and other things that you may want to use with this. Do make sure that when you're charging, you're using the right port, because there are two of them and it is quite easy to forget which is which. Also along the top there, we obviously have that headphone jack and also a micro HDMI out. It is really nice to see that micro HDMI out here, if you wanted to use it to push to a display to play on the bigger screen. Personally, I would never use this kind of port. I absolutely hate the mini HDMI standard. I just find that it breaks very easily and just is not a good port to use, but it's there if you want to use it. The bottom of the device shows that volume rocker, a power button, a reset button, the two speakers, and a place for your micro SD card as well. There is another micro SD card and we'll get into a little bit more about that in a second. But overall, the buttons along the bottom are fine. They don't feel particularly great, but you're not going to be using them a lot. And the speakers are subpar at best. You're not going to be using these for a really great listening experience. If you want that, use that auxiliary port at the top to get a much better audio experience. Overall, the design and the build quality is pretty amazing. There's absolutely no flex in the body, and I'm actually able to just throw this in my pocket or a bag and it doesn't feel like it's getting in the way. It's not too big and it's not too small. You get a nice amount of screen here, and we'll get a little bit more into that later. Before we go on with this review though, I just want to say that if this is the first time that you're seeing my face on your screen, then one, lucky you, and two, go down there, hit that subscribe button, smash that bell notification icon so you get notified every time I upload. Honestly, we are getting so close to 2,000 subscribers. I am super duper excited. Thank you to every single one of you who has subscribed so far. Do get subscribed as well, because I've got quite a few of these retro handheld reviews and comparisons coming up, particularly with this one and the PowerKitty X18S, which is a much more powerful version of this style of console. So get subscribed if you're interested. Anyway, let's get back on with this review. How does this actually emulate though? Very well once you've got it set up. You see, I had quite a lot of trouble setting this device up. After putting in some of my ROMs onto the SD card, plugging it in and turning it on, I actually found that if you don't power it down properly, or use that reset button on the bottom, or hold down the power button for a few seconds, you're probably going to corrupt the OS very, very quickly, and it's pretty annoying. Thankfully, it is fairly easy to fix. You're able to just unscrew the 4 screws on the back of the console, and you can see that internal micro SD card there. That one is your one that's going to hold the operating system and some of your ROMs as well if you desired. You can just pull that out, plug it into your computer, and just re-flash anything that you need to. I might suggest actually changing out this micro SD card to a known brand. This may well help with some of the stability issues that I've had. Thankfully though, when you do take this SD card out, it does make it a lot easier to flash custom ROMs and custom OSs. For example, I'm using a version of OpenDingux, which is a Linux-based system. It gave me a little bit better performance, and just the device overall was nicer to use with this new operating system. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested to find out how to get something like that set up. If you're not massively technical and don't really understand what you're doing, then this kind of system might not be right for you. You do kind of have to understand how RetroArch's going to work, and understand that you're going to need to reflash SD cards, make sure that they're all formatted correctly. There are a ton of guides online, but for many this might seem like a daunting task, and there are probably better handhelds on the market for you. Anyway, let's get back on track and actually talk emulation. The RJ350 has a GZ4770 CPU clocked at 1 GHz, alongside 512 MB of RAM. This is slightly better than its little brother, the 300 series. Straight off the bat, this thing is seriously impressive, but does have its limits when it comes to more modern consoles, such as the N64, the PSP, and maybe even the PS2. That is simply because that CPU is just not powerful enough. I do have a handheld with the Compatibility X18S which can support these games, and this device just really isn't built for that, and you shouldn't expect it to, particularly for its price. The RJ350 can run Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, MAME, FBA, NES, SNES, Genesis, WonderSwan, PS1 and Neo Geo. The list is pretty endless. I've just noted a few of the consoles there, but there are a ton more that it does support thanks to RetroArch and how it's all set up. It can run pretty much all of these games without breaking a sweat, and I love it. You can play your favourite Pokemon games on a Game Boy Advanced emulator, and it really does just feel like a more powerful Game Boy Advance. Alternatively, if you're feeling a little bit of OG Spyro or Crash Bandicoot, it does support PS1, and it plays really, really well. There are a few moments where I'm seeing some drops in frame rate on the more demanding PS1 games, such as the Final Fantasy series, but there are obviously things that you can do, such as frame skipping, just to get that performance a little bit better. Do bear in mind that many games will require you to do a little bit of tinkering behind the scenes with RetroArch, just to get the best performance possible. Let's come back to that screen. The screen is nice on this device, but I really do think it could be better. For me, I am partially sighted, and this screen is just a little bit too small for me. Honestly, the colour reproduction is brilliant, and many of the older consoles look great on this screen, particularly the Game Boy Advanced and some of the more monochromatic games such as the Game Boy series. It's also worth bearing in mind that it isn't touchscreen, so navigation is going to happen with the face buttons. This isn't a deal breaker, but if you wanted to try and emulate something like DS, just remember that you don't have that touchscreen support. Personally, I would go with something with a little bit of a bigger screen, but that obviously will compromise some of your portability. So it really is just a decision of whether you'd prefer a bigger screen to enjoy some of that content more, or the portability that something like the RJ350 supports. Anyway guys, what do you think of this console? Are you planning to get into retro gaming soon? Is this one of the devices that you are considering? Let me know in the comment section down below, and if there are other devices that you want me to check out, also let me know there, and I'll be sure to try and find them. Get subscribed as well while you're down there, because next week we're going to be talking about one of this guy's competitors. It's a little bit more expensive, but that is the Compatibility X18S. It is this thing, but supercharged, and it can run everything up to Game Boy and even PS2 games pretty well, so get subscribed. Anyway guys, my name's been Robert, this has been Review Clue, and I will catch you in the next one. Adios.